Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's video in which I will be covering my current training phase, or to be precise, the first training phase of the year, which ended this week. I've just finished testing my current level with all of the main exercises so I can show the progress that I've made since week one. Before we get into it and look at the specific exercises that I've been using, I'd like to give a little more context behind this plan and how it relates to both goals I want to achieve this year and ones that I will be aiming for in the future. Also, I'd like to give a quick thanks to anyone who has recommended ways in which I can improve the videos or specifically the kit that I'm using for it. You know who you are. Thanks a lot, it's really appreciated. So this is a 6 days per week training plan that I have been running for a total of 6 weeks. Historically, I've found training plans of 4 to 6 weeks seem to be most appropriate for me to continue to make progress and also avoid training plateaus. My aim is not to have to endure the training or suffer at all, but I do want it to be long enough to make it a challenge to sustain for the prescribed period of time. Of course, there are benefits in variety, hence why I won't follow a training plan for more than 6 weeks. But the truth is, you won't make progress if you don't maintain focus for long enough. If you try to catch 2 rabbits at once, they'll both get away. As a general rule, I tend to make rapid progress in the first few sessions, followed by a really distinct dip in ability in the 3rd week. If I've recovered well and the programming is appropriate, then the 4th week tends to be relatively strong. If it isn't, chances are I've overreached and I find that I'm excessively fatigued. If this happens, then I may decide to cut the phase short at 4 weeks. Now, I don't know if this is something which is backed by the scientific literature, but through experience, I've found it's an approach that works really well for me. So I have 3 different types of training phases that I like to cycle through, and this is the approach that I'll be taking this year. The first is an intensification phase, which I like to define as a sustained training period in which multiple variables are manipulated with the aim of increasing the intensity or the difficulty of all of the exercises throughout the phase. A lot of the adaptations to this style of training are neurological, which can come with excessive fatigue. So to counteract this, I will schedule in regular deload sessions to ensure that I'm getting enough quality rest throughout. In deload sessions, I will perform approximately 30 to 40% of the total volume in a typical session. The second training phase that I like to use is known as an accumulation cycle, where once again multiple variables are manipulated throughout, but this time with the aim of increasing the total volume each session. Once again, I will schedule in deload sessions much the same way by reducing 30 to 40% of the total volume. The third phase which I will use is known as a bridge, which means it doesn't fit the same layout as a typical accumulation or intensification cycle and will only last for a couple of weeks. I'm most likely to call upon this approach in cases of either extreme fatigue or where I know other life factors such as work and holidays are bound to limit my training options. In this type of training, I will tend to use the grease the groove approach, a phrase which was coined by Pavel Tsatsouline to describe the physiological process that occurs when you practice a specific strength skill. Without getting into too much detail, myelination is the process by which an increasingly efficient neuromuscular motor pattern develops through the repetition of the same movement pattern. To achieve this, it's really difficult to perform at maximal strength, so I'll tend to set myself a total number of reps that I want to achieve throughout the day and perform these either as individual repetitions or in multiple sessions. Using the wall-facing handstand push-up as an example, if I wanted to achieve 30 reps throughout the day, then I have a few options. I could either perform 30 individual reps spread out evenly. I could perform 3 sessions in the day where I'm going to perform 10 reps per session, or perhaps I could perform 15 total sets where I'm going to perform 2 reps per set. So for the past 6 weeks, I have been pursuing a training phase with the following layout. I have 2 upper body strength sessions labeled A and B, a handstand focus session and a leg session. Each session is performed 2 times per week with the exception of the handstand session, which is performed 4 times per week. Essentially, the pattern from Monday to Wednesday is repeated for Thursday to Saturday, with Sunday being my day off. On my day off, I will always do some cardiovascular or aerobic exercise, such as skipping, rowing, or if the weather's okay, my personal favourite, load up a backpack and go for a long walk. I will also have a weekly session in the sauna and the ice bath for recovery purposes. The first upper body strength session contains direct work on two of my main goals of the year. I've been pairing a wall-facing handstand push-up with a front lever, and in both instances I'm trying to use a body position that allows me to perform it relatively well. I'm not evangelical on maintaining perfect body positioning and alignment, especially with something that I aim to improve, but I like to aim for 75% of my reps to feel and look reasonably good. The remaining 25% should feel hard and won't be the best form, and this is actually a pretty good indicator that the level that you're working at is challenging but also achievable. The next exercise is an L-sit to shoulder stand. I'd like to be able to perform a pike press to handstand in the future, so this is a great exercise for developing bodily awareness and rigidity through space and the pushing strength required for a full range handstand push-up. Finally, I perform a second superset in this session, which includes a back to wall handstand push-up and a skin the cat. For these I'm using a slightly higher rep range as they are easier for me to achieve, but I'm still aiming to progress my ability with each of these in every subsequent session. In my upper body strength session B, I am using exercises which act as assistance exercises to the ones that I perform in the first session. Once again, I am using antagonist supersets, and for the first of these, I am pairing a piked handstand push-up using the box to elevate my feet and parallettes to be able to achieve a greater depth. These are paired with rope chin-ups, as eventually I aim to achieve a one arm, so it's nice to get started with some unilateral pulling work now. The second pair of exercises in this session contains a planche lean push-up as a starting point for developing the pushing strength for a full planche, and I'm also using ring rows, which are really simple but very, very effective for building horizontal pulling strength and great for assisting with front lever strength development. I'm also using a classic YTWL series as an exercise to help develop the strength in all of the muscles involved in opening or flexing the shoulders, and specifically a common weak area, which is the lower portion of the trapezius muscle. The letters simply refer to the position that the arms make in all four of the different exercises. Finally, I'm also incorporating a short and simple dowel routine to provide some extra work for the elbow, along with the wrist flexors and wrist extensors. My leg session is really straightforward. The goal here is to simply increase strength and range of motion in specific movement patterns. In the past, I've always found it very easy to put muscle weight on my lower body. Now that can be quite detrimental to achieving some of the bodyweight goals that I've set myself, along with the fact that it makes it an absolute pain to find trousers that fit. So I've decided intentionally to not train frequently with heavy weights. In this session, I'm working on the front split pattern, as this is going to be really important for me to start developing for some of my future goals. To begin, I start with a variation on the classic couch stretch, which aims to open up the anterior chain of the hip and specifically the hip flexors. I do this because the main leg exercise in this session, which is the front foot elevated split squat, if performed correctly will target the hip flexors of the supporting leg, which is an area equally as important for the development of front splits as hamstring flexibility. So I follow up this exercise with a superset, which is comprised of hanging leg raises and a pike stretch, in which I'm aiming to keep the torso as close as possible to the thighs. Finally, and most importantly, is my handstand session. For this, I've been using a couple of drills with the wall to start with the aim of finding a reasonably good balance position before moving on to the freestanding handstand work. The first drill is the toe pull, which is performed by getting relatively close to the wall in reasonable alignment, and then I'm pulling myself away from the wall by closing the shoulder position, which means moving it away from the wall so that the feet come away. It's important not to pull the feet here, as the goal is to be able to balance and rebalance using the hands and, if need be, the shoulders. The second drill is a heel pull, so this time with your back to the wall. Similarly, I'm trying to find a reasonable alignment and then come away from the wall to a balanced position. This time I'm using my hands to squeeze the floor and I'm pushing my fingers into the ground so that the feet are pulled off the wall. Once I feel comfortable finding a balance position with both of these drills, then I will move on to the freestanding practice. The two goals here are to increase my kick-up accuracy to avoid expending energy unnecessarily and to achieve a total of 60-second freestanding balance per day. So without further ado, let's see how I performed during the final week of this training phase. I've tried to be as honest as possible and not simply select the very best reps that I have managed to capture. I'm a really big believer that you can only legitimately say that you've achieved something if you've done it at least 3 times on separate occasions. I think anything else is likely down to coincidence or simply luck. So first up, as always, is the handstand push-up. I've made a bit of progress here in a couple of areas. The first is the depth I can achieve. I can perform decent reps from the floor now as opposed to the single block, which is an improvement of 7.5 centimeters. I also figured out quite recently that by using a single block, I have the pushing power to be able to push up out of the headstand position, and instead of balancing against the wall, I can actually get up to freestanding position. It's not always that successful, but I have managed a few really decent reps where I've been able to hold a freestanding handstand for multiple seconds at the end. The back to the wall handstand push-up is a really similar story. I've made exactly the same depth increase for the reps that I can perform. I've flirted with the idea of trying an eccentric rep, but that's not yet something that I can manage. However, I have found that I can perform a push-up from the bottom position to a balanced handstand, much like the wall-facing handstand push-up. Similarly, with the handstand push-up in the pike position with the feet elevated, I haven't changed the depth I'm working here, it's exactly the same, but I have found that I can get the hips significantly further forwards so they are stacked on top of the shoulders and the wrists, which is better at mimicking the true position of one of these in a real handstand push-up. With the front lever, I've found that I can achieve a slightly more open body position, both lowering down from a top hold and also pulling from the bottom. My back is still slightly rounded here, so there's a little bit more work to do to level that off. It would be unfair to say that I've made that much progress with the L-sit to shoulder stand. In all honesty, I've probably just been repping this out in the sessions and I haven't been putting that much attention to it, but it definitely has become more comfortable, and I've been playing around with the eccentric portion of this exercise to see how achievable a lower to bent arm planche might be. But all in all, I'm pretty comfortable with where I'm at. It's also a similar story with the skin the cat. Now, I've definitely been more proficient at these in the past, but I really haven't utilised it very much for quite some time. In the recent training sessions, I've been using a slightly more open body position, and this is for the given rep range, so a decent amount of progress here. Finally, the handstand. This is probably the skill that I have made the most progress with this year. The kick-up is way more proficient now. I find that I'm able to stack the hips above the shoulders and the wrists pretty quickly, and I've made loads of progress in being able to rebalance from both an underbalanced and overbalanced position. I've also found that it's possible for me to start improving my line during each hold and tucking the chin under slightly, though it often doesn't result in a longer handstand. So that is it for today. All in all, I am pretty happy with the progress I made. I hope there was something in there that you found useful. If there was, please do let me know in the comments, or even if there's something that you think would be useful for me, I would love to hear from you. I'm off to finish preparing my next training phase, which starts tomorrow, and I'll be making a similar video on that one in the future. Thanks for watching. I will see you all in the next video, and as always, happy training.